A millionaire steps into four of Seattle's most exclusive restaurants and comes face to face with the four-woman he never thought he'd see again, his pregnant ex-wife. Daniel Carter straightened the cuffs of his tailored navy blazer, catching his reflection in the glossy, floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, the Willow Room shimmered under golden chandeliers, the air alive with the gentle clink of crystal and the low hum of refined conversation. He'd been here countless times before, but tonight wasn't business. Tonight was different. Tonight, he was here with Rachel Hughes, the woman who'd made him believe in calm after the chaos of his divorce. She floated in wearing a deep emerald dress that hugged her just enough, her smile easy, her laugh like warm water over SD4. She was beauty wrapped in composure, balance in human form. And Daniel had a plan, a future, maybe even a ring. He'd already pictured the moment, practiced the words during the drive, turning them over in his head until they felt perfect. They were seated at a private table by the window, Seattle's glittering skyline spilling out below them. A waiter poured a vintage Bordeaux, and as Rachel spoke about her upcoming gallery show, Daniel nodded along, forcing smiles, trying to stay in the conversation. But something gnawed at him, a quiet, restless pull. And then it happened. He glanced up just as a waitress passed by. His breath caught. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near his world anymore. But there she was, Maya Sullivan. A simple black uniform. A dark apron tied snug over a belly that had to be 7 months along. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, a few loose strands clinging to her cheek from the kitchen heat. She didn't see him. Not yet. The room shifted around him, the air thick. Daniel's throat went dry. His mind exploded with questions. Was that really her? Why was she working here? And dear God, was that child his? The echo of her voice slammed into him. I don't need your emphory, Daniel. I just need you to listen. But he hadn't. He'd walked out. No, worse, he'd buried her. Buried their marriage under midnight meetings, high-stakes investments, and excuses polished enough to sound like truth. When the divorce came, he'd told himself it was mutual, clean, necessary. And he'd signed the papers without a single question about where she'd go or how she'd survive. And now, here she was, pregnant. Daniel barely heard Rachel's voice, pulling him back. Are you all right? Her brow creased in concern. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I thought I saw some four I knew. An ex? She teased, her T4 light but edged with curiosity. Before he could answer, Maya turned slightly. Their eyes locked for the briefest moment, and then she was G4, vanishing through the swinging door into the kitchen. Daniel's body moved before his brain could catch up. He half rose from his chair, but his legs felt like brittle glass. His mind spun. He hadn't even known she was pregnant. How far along was she when we signed the divorce papers? Did she even try to tell me? Rachel's gaze stayed fixed on him, her wine glass untouched. Do you know her? She asked softly. No. He lied. Too quickly, too clumsily. She narrowed her eyes, but let it go, at least for now. The rest of the dinner blurred into meaningless chatter. He barely touched his filet mignon. When Rachel excused herself to the restroom, Daniel flagged down a young waiter, his hands unsteady. The waitress from earlier. The four who came to our table. What's her name? The waiter frowned in thought. Oh, Claire. Claire Sullivan. She just left for the night. Works most evenings. Maya. Still using her maiden name. So she hadn't remarried. Or maybe she just couldn't stomach carrying his name anymore. When Rachel returned, he forced himself to straighten up, burying the turmoil under a thin smile. Just tired, he told her. She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe it. After dinner, instead of heading home, Daniel drove aimlessly through Seattle's quiet streets. The city lights cast long, restless shadows across his windshield. The image of Maya, 7 months pregnant, weary, serving strangers, burned in his mind like an old scar ripped open. He parked outside his Queen Anne Brown's 4, but didn't get out. His hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the last solid thing keeping him together. The memories came back slow and heavy, the final months of their marriage. The arguments that bled into silence. The nights she'd stayed up waiting for him, only to fall asleep curled on the couch. And her voice, breaking the last time she'd said it. Daniel, I don't recognize you anymore. She had been there when he had nothing. She had been there from the very first spark, helping turn his dorm room dream into Carter Tech, a corporate empire. And what had he given her in return? Elf-worliness, neglect, silence. The next morning, Seattle moved at its usual breakneck pace, but Daniel sat motionless in his kitchen. A mug of black coffee sat in front of him, SD4 cold. Rachel texted to ask how he was feeling. He didn't open it. Instead, he searched the Willow Room hours. That evening, he walked back into the restaurant. No reservation, no company, just a tight, pounding heartbeat and hands that refused to stay still. He asked for a table near the front, PH4 in hand as a prop, eyes fixed on the servers drifting in and out of the kitchen. And then, there she was. Maya. She hadn't noticed him yet. Her belly was more pronounced now, her steps slower, but she still carried herself with the quiet strength he remembered, the grace he had once taken for granted. When she turned to serve the table beside his, he finally spoke. Maya. She froze. Turning slowly, her eyes met his, not with shock, but with a weary recognition. Daniel, she said flatly, her voice clipped at the edges. I needed to see you. Her jaw tightened. I'm working. I know. Just 5 minutes. After your shift. Please. She studied him, not with longing, not even with anger, but with the guarded eyes of some who had rebuilt herself brick by brick and wasn't willing to risk another crack. I'm off at 10, she said at last, then turned and walked away. Daniel didn't eat. He just waited. And when the clock struck 10, she emerged from the back door, her coat barely pulled around her. The cold Pacific Northwest night pressed in, streetlights spilling gold across the pavement. She didn't smile. He hadn't expected her to. But somewhere, deep in the wreckage of his regret, Daniel knew this wasn't the end. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning. Now it's your turn. Should Maya give him a chance to explain? Can a man who once walked away truly earn his way back? And have you ever wished for a second chance you thought you'd never get? Maya stepped out into the night, arms crossed. Not from the chill, but from the W7 of the moment. Daniel was already there, waiting under the glow of a street lamp, hands shoved deep in his pockets, face pale, but resolute. You said 5 minutes, she began, her voice tight. I won't take more than that, Daniel promised quickly. I didn't know about the baby. About you. I didn't even know you were still in Seattle. Maya didn't answer. Her gaze drifted past him, to the dark stretch of street, to the parked cars, anywhere but his eyes. Is it mine? Daniel's voice was low, almost afraid of the answer. Maya closed her eyes for a heartbeat before nodding once. Yes. The single word landed between them like a ST4 dropped in still water. Daniel exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Why didn't you tell me? She turned toward him then, eyes sharp with anger, but behind it, a raw ache. Because when I needed you most, you were too busy building your empire, she said, her voice cutting clean. You were never home. You weren't listening. You walked out of our marriage long before I walked out of the house. That's not fair, Daniel began. No, she cut in, her voice trembling. What wasn't fair was watching the man I loved vanish into some I didn't recognize. I begged you to see me, Daniel. And you looked right through me, like I was invisible. He dropped his gaze to the sidewalk, every word hitting its mark. You're right, he said quietly. I was blind. I was selfish. I don't expect forgiveness, Maya. She shook her head, but her posture eased, if only slightly. It's not about wanting to be here, Daniel. It's about showing up. And I'm not sure you even know what that means anymore. Then teach me, he said, desperation threading through his voice. Let me prove it, please. Maya hesitated. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then finally, she murmured, I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking you to, he replied. The days that followed were fragile. Measured. Daniel didn't force his way in. He stayed at the edges, waiting for her to open the door. He started small. A bag of prenatal vitamins delivered to her porch with a note, just in case you run out. A warm dinner left after her late shift. Figured you might be too tired to cook tonight. No constant calls. No grand gestures. Just a quiet, steady presence. For afternoon, Maya opened her apartment door to find Daniel standing there awkwardly, holding a half-assembled crib. His hair was a mess, and there was a streak of wood glue across his sleeve. I didn't want to presume, he said, shifting his W7. But I figured the little guy might need a place to sleep. She blinked. You built that. Sort of. I had help from YouTube. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, a small breath of laughter escaped her lips, quick and surprised. She stepped aside. Come in. Over the next few weeks, their rhythm shifted. Daniel became part of her life again, not all at once, but in quiet, deliberate ways. He learned the timing of his visits so he wouldn't overwhelm her. He offered rides to doctor's appointments, waited outside without complaint when she said she preferred to go in aisle 4, and never once touched her unless she initiated it. The walls she'd spent months building didn't crumble overnight, but they began to crack. For rainy evening, after he'd brought groceries and insisted on cooking, they ended up on her worn couch, watching reruns of a sitcom they used to love. Maya leaned back slowly, feet propped up, her hand resting protectively over her belly. You've changed, she said suddenly. Daniel turned, caught off guard. I hope, for the better. She nodded. You're more present. Calmer. I don't know what happened to you these past months, but you're not the same man I left. He swallowed hard. That man didn't know how to love anything except his work. I lost everything that mattered before I figured that out. Maya studied him, long, searching. Why now? Because I saw you again, he said quietly. And I realized if I walked away a second time, I'd never forgive myself. But it wasn't all smooth. For night, Rachel appeared at his penthouse. She stood in the entryway, arms crossed, mascara smudged. I heard, she said, her voice trembling, about Maya, the baby, the visits. All of it. Daniel didn't lie. I didn't mean for any of this to hurt you. But I have a child coming. I have a chance to make things right. I can't walk away from that. Rachel stared at him. So what happens to us? He lowered his gaze. I think this is where our story ends. She didn't cry, just nodded, turned, and left. It hurt, but it was age-forced. Meanwhile, Maya's due date crept closer. For night, Daniel arrived at her apartment, holding something in his hands, a tiny, hand-knit beanie in navy blue and gray. I tried to knit it myself, he said with a sheepish smile. But my assistant kind of fixed most of it. Maya laughed softly, turning the cap over in her hands. It's perfect. Daniel hesitated. There's something else. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya's breath caught. Wait, she said quickly. I'm not ready for that, Daniel, Maya said firmly. He opened the box anyway. Inside wasn't a ring. Instead, a delicate gold chain gleamed under the light, holding a single charm, a tiny engraved heart with the name Noah. For him, Daniel said softly. Not for us. Not yet. I wanted you to know I'm here. And I'll keep showing up, however long it takes. Maya stared at the necklace for a long moment, her fingers trembling before they brushed against his as she took it. Thank you, she whispered. That night, after she closed the door behind him, Maya pressed the necklace to her chest. For the first time in months, she let herself imagine a future that didn't hurt. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. But should she open her heart again? Or keep protecting herself and her son? Would you choose love if it meant risking the same heartbreak all over again? Maya's answer came so far than she expected. Her water broke just after midnight. She was out for, folding baby clothes into drawers, when a sudden wave of pain doubled her over. At first, she tried to breathe through it, but the next contraction hit harder, faster. Her hands shook as she grabbed her pH4. She didn't hesitate. She called Daniel. It rang once. I'm on my way, he said, before she could even speak. 12 minutes later, headlights swept across her street. Daniel was up the stairs in seconds, breathless, pale, eyes wide. You okay? His voice shook as much as his hands. Maya nodded, gripping the wall. Just help me downstairs. He didn't waste another word. For arm went around her shoulders, the other steadied her waist. He guided her down the steps, settled her into the passenger seat, fastened her seatbelt, and drove toward Harborview Medical Center like nothing else in the world existed. Inside the delivery room, time fractured. Monitors beeped. Nurses moved like clockwork. The pain came in crushing waves, stealing her breath. Daniel never left her side. He cooled her forehead with a damp cloth, his hand locked around hers, his pulse pounding against her skin. You're doing amazing, he whispered, over and over, like a promise, like a prayer. At 4 point, Maya turned her head toward him, hair plastered to her temples. Don't leave. I won't, he said, steady and certain. Not now, not ever. Hours blurred together in that quiet, relentless rhythm. And then, there it was. The sharp, perfect cry of a newborn. The room seemed to pause, holding its breath for a single impossible moment, as everything in her life shifted. A nurse laid the tiny, wriggling baby on Maya's chest. Her sob broke free, not from pain, but from the overwhelming, unstoppable wave of love that crashed through her. Daniel stared, stunned, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. He's perfect, he whispered. Maya smiled through her own tears. Meet your son. Later, in the quiet of a private hospital room, Daniel sat beside Maya. She cradled Noah as he slept, soft, warm, impossibly small. She had never looked more exhausted, or more beautiful. Daniel reached out, brushing his hand gently over the baby's downy hair. He has your nose. Maya chuckled, her voice soft. Let's hope he gets your stubborn streak. He came out fighting. A comfortable silence settled over them, full, but not heavy. I meant what I said, Daniel murmured. I'm not going anywhere. I want to be his father. Every diaper, every late night, every first step. And not because I feel guilty, because I love him. And I love you. Maya didn't answer right away. She looked down at her son, then at the man beside her, not the Daniel she'd once left, but some for steadier. Some for who wasn't rushing or pleading, just age-forced. I never thought we'd get here, she said finally. But I'm glad we did. Daniel's breath caught. His shoulders eased, the W7 sliding away. So, we're really doing this. Maya's smile was quiet but certain. We're really doing this. 3 months later, on a calm spring morning, Noah lay on a blanket in the grass at Seattle Public Garden, his tiny arms waving like he was conducting clouds. Maya sat beside him, sipping coffee. Daniel paced a few feet away, a diaper bag slung over his shoulder, frowning at a bottle warmer like it had betrayed him. "You're overcomplicating it," Maya called, laughter in her voice. "It's supposed to beep when it's ready," he muttered, glaring at it. "Or," she said with a smirk, "you could just ask me." He rolled his eyes dramatically, then crossed back to her, careful not to crush the baby's scattered toys. Sitting down beside her, he reached for her hand. Maya let him take it. Their fingers laced together easily, like they'd been meant to find their way back all along. "You know," Daniel said, squinting up at the bright summer sky, "I used to think success meant boardrooms and bonuses." He glanced at the blanket, the baby, the breeze, the scattered bottles, and burp cloths. "Now it's this," he added. "And your laugh." Maya leaned her head against his shoulder. "This is the best deal you've ever closed." He smiled. "And the four I'll never walk away from." That summer, they held a small ceremony in the garden behind Maya's apartment building. Not a wedding exactly, more like a celebration. Close friends. A few family members. No tuxes, no aisle. Just a rented white tent, fairy lights strung overhead, and a promise. Daniel held Noah in forearm as he took Maya's hand with the other. She wore a soft white sundress, her hair pinned back with wildflowers. Noah babbled right in the middle of the vows, and every four laughed. "I don't vow to be perfect," Daniel said, his voice trembling. "But I vow to never stop trying. For you. For our son. For the life we almost lost, but found again." Maya's eyes shimmered. "And I vow," she whispered, "to let you in. To not run. To trust what we're building, even when it's messy. Especially then." When they kissed, the guests clapped, and Noah giggled in Daniel's arms like he understood every word. The months that followed weren't flashy, but they were full. Morning coffees with Maya in their tiny kitchen. Walks in the park with Noah. Diapers. Dishes. Lullabies sung off-key. Some nights were hard. Some days tested every shred of patience they had. But love no longer felt fragile. It felt like home. Like choice. Like waking up each day and saying, "I'm here. Still. Always." And for quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the Seattle skyline, Noah pulled himself up on wobbly legs, took 4 uncertain steps, then another, right into Daniel's arms. "Daddy." The word was clear as a bell. Daniel froze. Then he laughed, a deep, shaking laugh that broke into tears. Maya covered her mouth, eyes wide in shock. Noah just blinked up at them, blissfully unaware that he had just changed their world all over again. Daniel pressed a kiss to the top of his son's head. "You have no idea what you just did, buddy." Maya stepped closer, wrapping her arms around both of them. "I think he does," she whispered. That night, they lay in bed, Maya tucked into Daniel's chest, Noah sleeping soundly in the nursery next door. "I never believed in second chances," Daniel murmured into the quiet. "But now, I think they're where the real magic happens." Maya kissed his collarbone for and nodded. Sometimes the best love stories don't start perfect. They start over. And in the soft dark, they held each other like they never wanted to let go again. Maybe Daniel's greatest success wasn't his company, his net worth, or his empire. Maybe it was this, being able to look at his son and know, without question, that he was his top priority. If this were the close of a film, the screen would fade to black on that image. Maya and Daniel in each other's arms. Noah between them in the life they rebuilt.